I'm Niamh Casey. I'm an authoring expert here at Learnosity. You may have talked to me before, you may have not. And that's my email address there on the screen, niamh.casey@learnosity.com. So always feel free to reach out to me if you have any authoring queries, any follow-up queries from this webinar or otherwise. So in this presentation today, we're going to just look at, the main thing we're going to look at is authoring a Cloze Math Question. But before we do that, we're going to look at, we'll touch on a little bit about what MathCore is and our math question types that we offer. We'll also just touch on LaTeX. Some of you may have never used it before or may not know what it is. And then we're going to look at each of the scoring methods that we use in our math questions to score the questions. And we'll look at what each of those does, and it might give you a better idea of when to use each method. And then we'll go into our Cloze Math demo, and you can actually see the methods being used properly. So first of all, MathCore is our purpose-built auto-scoring engine for math. We've built it ourselves, and it can score really, really complex math really efficiently. It does this with scoring methods. So when you are authoring a question, you select a particular scoring method to score the question with, and that is what MathCore uses then to check if the student's response is correct. So that's what we mean when we talk about MathCore. We're talking about our specific question types that use that scoring engine. So we have 3 at the moment. So that's Math Formula, Cloze Math, and Cloze Math with Image. So Math Formula, you'd use this really if you just had one line of math that you wanted the student to enter, maybe an expression or just a single value. So you have your question stem here, and you have different response boxes for the student to enter their response. Then we have Cloze Math. So this one you might use for a multi-part math question, a question where you have multiple lines of math, multiple response boxes. It allows you to ask multiple questions inside one question. So that's kind of the difference between Cloze Math and Math Formula. Cloze Math is multiple lines, Math Formula is just one line. And then we have a Cloze Math with Image question as well. So this one is just, if you've ever used any of our other Cloze image questions, you upload an image as an author, and then you add some response boxes on top of it. You can click and drag to place them on the image, and then you just validate the question, and the student comes along, and what they type in here will be math. So it's just like a math version of our regular Cloze image questions. And you'll notice when you are validating math questions and when the student is entering math responses, they're actually entering those responses in LaTeX, and you're validating the question in LaTeX. So LaTeX is, as I mentioned, it's used in our MathCore questions. It's a markup language, and you'll see it a lot in academia, especially in documents in math, computer science, engineering, chemistry, and so on. And really all it does is it lets you render math really, really nicely. You can render quite complex math that you couldn't render otherwise. And it looks really consistent, really neat, really clear, easy to read. Okay, so now that we know what LaTeX is, and now that we know what MathCore is, we're going to jump right into looking at each of our scoring methods that we use, and then we'll go and actually use them properly in the question editor. So there are 10 different scoring methods, which is quite a lot. But there's 3 main ones that you need to know, first of all. And they are equivSymbolic, equivLiteral, and equivLue. So once you get your head around those 3, those are the ones you'll be using 99% of the time. The other 7 methods are more secondary methods. You might use them in conjunction with one of these methods. They're not as powerful. So we'll just look at the main ones for now, the main 3. So first of all, we have equivSymbolic. So this one accepts, if you set up equivSymbolic as your scoring method, it will accept any answer that is symbolically equivalent or mathematically equivalent to the answer you've specified in validation. So for example, you have 13/2 here specified in validation, and you set equivSymbolic as your method. It will accept anything here, 26/4, 6.5, 650%, 6 plus a half, and so on. There's probably an endless amount that you could enter in here, and it would be marked as correct. So it's an extremely open-ended scoring type. Then we have equivLiteral, which is actually the complete opposite. It's really, really strict. It will only accept an answer that is exactly what you specified in validation. So with this, we have a half here. It won't accept 0.5, even 7/14, even though it's a fraction. 50%, it won't accept that either. Whereas our previous scoring method, equivSymbolic, would have accepted those as correct. So equivLiteral will not, it will only accept a half. So it's extremely, extremely strict. And then we have equivalue. So equivalue is really similar to equivSymbolic in that it will score things that are mathematically equivalent to what you've entered in validation. But the difference with this is you would really use it when you're using units of measurement. It can understand units of measurement. So for example, we have here 1 meter. It knows that 1 meter is also 100 centimeters and 1,000 millimeters. So the other scoring methods aren't that clever with units of measurement. You can still use it with decimals, fractions, and percentage as well, just like equivSymbolic. So they are very similar, but it doesn't recognize variables. And it has a tolerance feature, which we'll look at too. So it means that you can have the student give an answer in a particular range, so plus or minus a certain value. And that's the only scoring method that has that tolerance. Okay, so those are 3 main scoring methods. So now we're going to look at our secondary scoring methods, the ones that you might use in conjunction with the 3 we just looked at. So first of all, we have isSimplified. So this will accept the most simplified version of an expression, and you'd use this with equivSymbolic. So you'll notice with these secondary methods that really they're useful for tightening up a really open-ended scoring method like equivSymbolic. equivSymbolic is so open-ended, isSimplified or another secondary method really helps to tighten up the answer. So for example, here we have x times x plus 3 over 12. So it'll accept x squared plus x over 4. It will not accept x times x plus a quarter, even though that is correct, mathematically equivalent. It's not the most simplified version. Okay. Then we've isFactorised. So again, you'll notice a pattern here with the names. So just like isSimplified, it would only accept a simplified version. isFactorised will only accept a factorized form of the answer. So again, you use this with equivSymbolic. So x squared minus 3x plus 2, it will accept x minus 1 times x minus 2, but it won't accept x times x minus 3 plus 2, even though it is correct. Then we have isExpanded. So again, it only accepts the most expanded version of an expression. And again, you would use this with equivSymbolic. So for example, we have 2x minus 4 times x minus 5. So we'll accept 2x squared minus 14x plus 20, but we will not accept anything else. Okay. Number 7 now is true. So this one is a little bit different. It just checks if an expression is true or not. You can use it on its own and it will just accept anything at all that's true, that's correct. You can use it with relational or equality operators. So if you want the student to enter in an expression using like a greater than symbol, less than symbol, equal symbol, whatever, you can use it here and it'll be able to check if it is correct. Then we have isUnit. So you would use this one with equivalue, which you might have guessed. It checks if a response is in a certain unit of measurement. So for example, I have 1 kg in my response area, and I've specified with the isUnits method that I want to accept grams and centigrams, but I haven't said anything about kg, so it won't accept kg. So when you're setting up an isUnit scoring method, you'll have to specify what units of measurement you're happy to accept. And in this case, I just said grams and centigrams. So it won't accept anything else, even if it is actually equivalent. Okay. Then we have stringMatch, which this one isn't mathematical. It just checks that a string matches the string you specified in validation. So no math here. So this is more commonly used with sequences of numbers. So you can see here, I have 3, 5, 8. And once I put in the commas, it doesn't really matter how many spaces I have or anything. It'll still accept that as correct. But if I don't include my commas, I will get the question wrong. So you just have to match the string validation here. And then lastly, we have equivSyntax. So this checks if what the student enters as their response is in a specific syntax pattern that the author specifies in validation. So for example, the correct answer here is 0.5 or well, a half, but I've specified using my equivSyntax that I only want to accept fractions here. So I'll accept a half, I'll also accept 2 over 4, 4 over 8, and so on. I won't accept 50% or 0.5. I won't accept anything that isn't a fraction that's equal to a half. Okay. And that's it. So we're going to go now and look at the Cloze Math Question, and we're going to look at how to author that. So just go in here. So in the question editor templates view, you'll see in the math section, this is where you'll find the MathCore questions. So obviously we do have other questions you can use with math, graphing questions, charts. but the math section is where all the MathCore questions belong. So the questions that use our math auto-scoring engine. So we have math formula here, math essay here, which I didn't mention before, but math essay isn't auto-scored, so it doesn't actually use MathCore, but the student can enter in math in an essay with this question, which they can't do with the other essay questions, so that's why it lives in here. We've Cloze Math and Cloze Math with image. Don't be confused by some of these templates here, math with fractions, all the way down to math with units. These are just templates based off of math formula. They're all math formula question types, so there is really just 3 MathCore here. So we'll click on Cloze Math, and this is our Cloze Math question editor. So we have a composed question area at the top. So this is where we would say something like solve the following equation. Now you'll see here in the toolbar we do have a math editor. So it's the sigma symbol, and if we click on it, we can actually enter, this is where our LaTeX comes in. So we can enter LaTeX in the question stem if we want to. Now here, we also can enter LaTeX into this template area here. So this template area is where you'd set up response boxes for the student to enter their answers. So that's just using this OR button in the toolbar here. So you might want to have some math in here as well. So you can say, let's just get rid of our response box. So you can use the math editor here again, and we can say, I don't know, 5 times 6 equals, and you'll see the number pad here on the left, and we have a blue symbols pad on the right. So I can toggle between different symbols pads with this drop down on the top. So anything in blue is a symbols pad. So you can see it changes with different groups. I select from the drop down. And if you're comfortable entering a raw LaTeX, you can do that here in the source. If you want to, go back. So we'll click OK, and then we'll enter in our response box here. Okay, so now the student can come along and enter in a response. And then if you want to delete that, you just click on the area and backspace. It's very simple. So you can enter LaTeX anywhere that you see that math editor icon. And that doesn't just go for math questions, that goes for any question. So you could have a multiple choice question with math in it. Then when we go down to the validation area, this is where we see the math keypad. So we have our scoring methods drop down here. So this is where we specify what scoring method we want to use in our math question. And then we have a value area here where we enter in the correct answer. So if I click on that, I'll get that math keypad popping up. So instead of using the math editor for this, I just have a nice keypad that pops up. This is a LaTeX only area, so I can only enter math in here. Whereas up in these fields, I can enter whatever I want, text, pictures, audio files, whatever I want. So we'll come back down here and we'll just take our first scoring method, which is equivSymbolic. It's one of our main 3 scoring methods. And I'm going to select that and I'm going to enter something in the value area. So let's just say a fraction like 13/2. Okay, we can see an area label next to it auto generates. So we can change that if we want to as well. You can edit it to whatever you want, but it's just handy that it auto generates. It can save you time. So now I can say 13/2, so equivSymbolic is extremely open-ended, so I can accept 26/4 as the correct answer. You can see here, that's correct. I can enter in 6 plus 1/2, oops, 1/2 as my correct answer. And I can accept 6.5 and so on. I can enter percentages, whatever, there, it'll all be accepted as the correct answer. I can round the answer to a certain number of decimal places as well. So I could say 2 significant decimal places, and I can say 6.54. So it'll just round the answer to whatever significant decimal places you select in here. Then we have a compare sides option. So this one's not immediately obvious what it does. So if I want the student to enter in an expression as the answer, so for example, 6 plus 4 equals 10. The way MathCore works, if I don't enable this compare sides option, if I just leave this as it is, if the student comes along and enters any true equation at all, it'll be marked as correct. So that could be 10 times 2 equals 20. It could be anything, fractions, square roots, whatever you want in here. Once it's true, it'll be accepted as correct. So if I turn on this compare sides, now I'm telling MathCore that whatever expression the student enters has to be equal to 10. Okay, so now if I try and enter in my 2 times 7 equals 14, even though it's true, it's not being it's not being marked as correct. Okay, so that's what compare sides does. Allow decimal marks as well. If you turn this on, you can actually change the decimal separators and the thousand separators. So by default, MathCore uses a dot decimal separator and a comma thousand separator, but you can change those. So you can make the decimal separator a comma, and you can make the thousand separator a dot or a space. And you could have multiple decimal and thousand separators are selected here as well. Okay, so we'll just disable that. Then if we go to our next scoring method, it's equivLiteral. So if you remember, this is our really strict scoring method. So in here, if I say something like x squared plus xy, if I try and enter xy plus x squared, just in a slightly different order, it won't accept it as correct. So it really is that strict, and it has to be the exact order. Even x squared plus yx, it's not correct. So if I want to not be quite as strict and I want to ignore the order, I just enable this ignore order option here. And now I will enter any order and it will be marked as correct. I can also just ignore trailing zeros. I ignore a coefficient of 1 here with this option. So ignore trailing zeros will just ignore if I have a decimal and I have trailing zeros in that decimal, it will ignore them and pretend they're not there. And I can ignore a coefficient of 1 as well. So if I say x is the correct answer and I enter 1x here, it'll be marked as correct. So these options just loosen up equivLiteral a little bit, so it's not quite as strict. We've our allow decimal marks option again as well. Then with equivLue, you can see here that we have similar additional options that you have in equivSymbolic, since they are very similar scoring methods. But you'll see here with equivLue, if I enter 1 meter as my correct answer, it'll recognize 100 centimeters and it will recognize 1000 millimeters as well. If I switch my scoring method back to equivSymbolic and try and do my 100 centimeters, it won't work. It doesn't recognize it. And same with my millimeters, my 1000 millimeters as well. Okay. Then, so those are our 3 main scoring methods. So after that, we have our supporting methods here. So as I said, you can combine scoring methods, you can use them together, and that's mainly what you'll do with these guys down here from isSimplified down. So the first one we're going to look at is isSimplified. So I can use this with equivSymbolic. So I'll keep my equivSymbolic method here, and I'll say the correct answer is 1400 over 800. Okay. So now if I click this blue add button here, I can add a second scoring method. So let's pick isSimplified. And now I have nothing else to do here with isSimplified. I have my allow decimal marks option again to switch up my thousand separator and my decimal separator. But apart from that, I have no other options here. And now I will only accept a simplified response here. So I haven't specified that it has to be a fraction either, because we've used equivSymbolic, remember, it's still really open-ended. So this will accept 1 3/4, but it'll also accept 1.75 as well. It'll also accept 7/4 and so on. So just once it's a simplified version of this value I've entered here. So that's how you can stack methods. Then we have, and I just want to say as well that the order of methods doesn't matter here. So we could have isSimplified on the top here and equivSymbolic as our second method, and that doesn't matter. So you don't need to pay attention to the order you set your methods. Okay, so next we have isFactorised. So if I have my equivSymbolic value as x squared minus 3x plus 2, and I set my second method to isFactorised, now I can enter in x minus 1, x minus 2, and it'll be accepted as the correct answer. If I try and enter in the expression I have in validation, it's not correct because it's not factorized. Okay. Then we have isExpanded again. So again, all of these methods, isSimplified, isFactorised, isExpanded, can be used with equivSymbolic. So we'll select isExpanded this time. We'll select 2x minus a here. And now if we after 2x squared minus 2x here, it's accepted as the correct answer. I try my 2x minus a here, it doesn't work. So it just needs to be in an expanded version. Then we have is true. So is true, I can actually use this on its own if I want to. So if I use it on its own, it will just, any expressions the student enters, once it's mathematically true, it'll be marked as correct. I can also use it so what that's useful for is, say you want the student to enter something using a greater than symbol or a less than symbol, but you don't really mind what exact values they use, just that they can illustrate that they understand the symbols, then you can use this true on its own and do it that way. Then we have is unit, which we said before you use with equivvalue. So we'll set up equivvalue here, and we'll set up our example we used already, our 1 meters. And then we'll set up our secondary method here, and we'll say is unit. And this is where you enter in, separated by a comma, you enter in your values that you want to accept in your answer. So we'll say here that we'll accept centimeters. Okay, so now if I enter in 1 meter, it's not correct. If I enter in 100 centimeters, it's correct. But if I enter in 1,000 millimeters, it's not correct either. I can put in millimeters here now with a comma. And now it will accept my millimeter answer and my centimeter answer, but it still won't accept my 1 meter. So it's just a way to specify what units of measurement you're willing to accept and what units of measurement you don't want to accept. Okay, then we have a couple more scoring methods here. So we have stringMatch, which is our second last one here. And with this one, as I mentioned in our slide deck, this one is really used for sequences of numbers. So something like 3, 5, and 8. I can ignore leading and trailing spaces, and I can treat multiple spaces as one. So these are turned on by default. So if I go along here now and I enter space, 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 3, 5, 8. Space, space, space. It's working. Okay, perfect. So yeah, I can enter in leading spaces, I can enter in trailing spaces, I can enter in as many spaces as I want in between as well, but I need to include my commas. Okay, let's treat multiple spaces as one. So yeah, I can enter in as many spaces as I want in between the numbers as well, and it'll still treat it as correct. Then we have equivSyntax, which is our final scoring method, and this one just allows you to accept answers from the student that are in a certain format. So for example, if we have equivSymbolic as our correct answer, and we're going to say that we'll accept 0.5, but we only want to accept fraction answers. Then we go down to our equivSyntax, we specify the rule, so let's say fraction. And then we enter in a half, or we enter in 2/4. Whatever fractions are equal to a half is fine. If I enter in 0.5, it's not correct, or 50%, it's not correct. And you'll see here that some of the options you choose, you'll see this argument field appear. It doesn't go along with every rule, but for example, with decimal, you can select an argument of 3. So that just means that you need to enter your value in 3 decimal places. Okay. And those are our scoring methods. So you can use some scoring methods alone, some are designed to be used together, and your main 3 scoring methods are equivSymbolic, equivLiteral, and equivvalue. So now in the more options section, I'm just going to take a look at some of the other options you have in math questions that are specific to math questions. So scoring area is the same as always. Then in the layout section here, you have a formula template. So this is really useful to know about in Cloze Math, because in Cloze Math, when you go up here, because this is a text-only area, I can't make my response box a fraction or anything like that in here. So I need to go and do it down here in my formula template area. So it's in the layout section under, I can do response container global or response container individual. Now I've only one response container here, so global is the one I'll use. But if you had multiple response containers and you wanted individual configurations on each one, you can just go down and add the configurations for each individual container. Just remember that anything you configure in the individual section will override global settings. So we'll delete this. So in the formula template, I can say response over response, and now my response box turns into a fraction. Okay, so I'll delete that. I can also set up the width and height for my response box. This is just the default size, but I can change this to whatever I want, 50 pixels by 30 pixels, make it bigger. And then again, you can have your global settings, so you can have all the response containers be the same size, or you can have them be different sizes. It's up to you. Then down in the keypad section, so you'll notice that when the student clicks into the response area, they see a keypad appear. So they have a number pad on the left. We call this area from the grey part onwards to the left, the number pad. And then all of these blue buttons here are the symbols group. So by default, the student can only access a basic symbols group, which is all of these options here. And they can switch to a QWERTY keyboard as well if they want to. But you can customize this as an author. So first of all, we can change the keyboard type that the student sees. So by default on the math questions, you'll see a floating keyboard. So when they click into the area, a keyboard will appear and they can drag it around the screen, and when they click away, it will disappear. I can also choose a block keyboard as well. So that keyboard is there all the time, it never goes away, whether I click into the area or not. Then I have a block on focus keyboard. So when I click into the area, it appears, but I can't drag it around the screen. And then lastly, I can have no keyboard as well if I want to. This show keypad hints option, I'll just change this back to floating. This show keypad hints option will just display keyboard shortcuts and names for the symbols. If I hover over them, you'll see it appear beside the drop-down menu. And I can disable those if I want to. This place keypad below response area is quite useful if you have multiple response boxes in your question. So let's just add a couple more here. Okay. So at the moment, if I don't have this place keyboard below response area option enabled and I click into the area, it's covering up the other response boxes, or it might cover up text in the question that I need. So if I place the keyboard below, or the keypad below the response area, when I click into each question, the keypad will just appear underneath the response area, and if there's text in there, it will appear underneath that text, so nothing will be obscured. So down here in the number pad and symbols areas is where I can customize my keypad. So this is the default keypad that we see. Let's make the keypad block so we can see it. So I can actually change the order of numbers here if I want to, or I can delete numbers, delete buttons if I want to as well. So I just click on the button that I want to change, and I can say empty to make it disappear, or I can click on what I want to replace it with. So I can do that. I can get rid of everything if I want to, and that's it. So this number pad area is just concerned with this grey area and these yellow options here as well. And then we have our symbols area on the right. So this is where I can configure what symbols groups the student will see in their drop-down box. So as I said, by default, it's a basic and a QWERTY keyboard, but I can change that. So I can delete these if I want to. So the student sees no symbols, so they just see their number pad. I can add as many symbols groups as I want as well. So you can see any, and they'll just appear in their drop-down. I can also create custom symbols groups. So I just do that in the drop-down, add custom group at the bottom. And a new little area will appear. So I can label my custom group, so custom, and I modify it in the same way I modify my number pad. So I click on the button that I want to change, and I just pop in any symbols that I want in here. So just enter in some random assortment here. And so on. And I can have multiple custom groups if I want to as well. And they'll appear in the drop-down under the label that you specify here. Okay, and I can delete that as well. And then lastly, we have a text blocks option here. So whatever I enter, let's just get rid of this keyboard. So whatever I enter in here will be rendered as text when the student enters it. So for example, I say centimeters. This is useful. So if I go to equivSymbolic and I say my answer is 10, and I check this ignore text option, I've specified centimetres in my text box area. So now it means if the student enters 10 centimetres, it will still be marked as correct because I told the scoring engine to ignore the text in the question and only score the value that the student has entered. And that's mainly what text box would be used for. So if you had a scenario where it didn't matter whether the student entered a unit of measurement or not, you didn't want to penalise anyone for not entering a unit of measurement, then you can just make it a text block here and click on the ignore text option up in the scoring method. And that's it. Okay, so that is how you author a Cloze Math question. Those are all of the math-specific options. Any of the other options that you see in the Cloze Math question are in all of our other question types as well. So there's nothing else new or unusual there. Okay, so now we'll just see if we have any questions. So I can see a question here from Lynn Frankel. Does isUnit only work with metric units? So we actually have a doc site here. And you can see we have a formula and math engine section. And you can see here we have this list of SI and US customer units. So this is what we support. So isUnit will work with SI and US customer units. Okay. And I don't think we've any other questions, so we'll leave it here for today if that's the case. If you do have any other questions, please do not hesitate to email authoring@learnosity.com, or if you do have access to the Learnosity support portal, you can log a ticket as well with support.learnosity.com, and we'll have a recording of this webinar emailed out to all the registrants anyway in the next couple of days. Okay. And that's it. Okay, so thank you, everyone. And please do email if you have any follow-up questions, okay? Thank you.